Hello everyone, JesterGio here, and welcome back to Brewing Thoughts. In today's video, I'm gonna be talking about all the changes that will be coming out for the end of Season 35. Now, normally, this particular balance changes analysis wouldn't be as long as the rest. This is because, for this season, we are only getting 4 character changes by the time Season 36 rolls around. I actually debated on whether to make this a short or an actual video because of how small the changes were. However, recently, NetEase also showed off their new survivor that will be releasing, I'm assuming for Season 36. So, in this video, we will be theory crafting what this new survivor's role will be while also talking about the balance changes. So, without further ado, let's begin the discussion with the new survivor. The new survivor is called the Archer and, with that name alone, we can infer a few things based on that. Right off the bat, we can just assume that she will not be a decoder of any kind. I'm sorry, but based off how she looks and what her name implies, I just don't see a universe where she will be a decoder. In Before I'm Wrong and she is a decoder, but I just can't see it with how battle-worn she is in her wielding a bow. On top of that, but we already had a decoder release recently, Pharaoh Lady, so it wouldn't make sense for them to release 2 decoders that quickly. Because of that, we can narrow it down to her either being a container, a rescuer, or a harasser support. However, because Knight was one of our more recent releases and he was a rescuer, I don't see her being a rescuer as well. I do think her item lends some potential of being a pseudo-rescuer, like Wendy or Batter, but I don't think she will be a rescuer. That leaves us with the most likely options that the Archer will, that being either a support or a container. More specifically, I think Archer might possibly be our next harasser coming into the game. Looking at IDV's history, our last harasser to be added into the game was Anti, who was released 2 years ago, approaching 3. Because of that, I can see NetEase possibly dipping their toes into making a new harasser survivor to play as. And by harasser, I specifically mean the survivors who can rescue survivors from balloons. Technically speaking, you can support with Fire Investigator and Wendy, but I don't count them as harassers because of their inability to balloon rescue. Honestly, given how we have gotten both a rescuer and a decoder in the past year, it kinda makes sense that we were due for another harasser. Plus, given how her ability will most likely revolve around her bow, it makes a lot of sense that she might be a harasser. The only question that now comes to mind is how will her power work if we were to assume she was a harasser. They could go traditional and make it so she can aim her bow to fire and the arrows that hit the hunter will stun them. It's very simple, but that seems like a logical way to incorporate her ability. The problem is that it would sorta be similar to Batter's ability, which could unintentionally lower Batter's pick rate if Archer turns out to be better Batter. It really just depends on how they would balance her out if they were to go this route. Another way they could approach designing her is by giving her different arrow types to work with. These arrow types will have different effects and these effects could either help the survivors or hinder the hunter depending on who is hit by which. This way, even if she isn't a harasser, she can fill a more support role for the team, helping them out with long-range buffs. I do think she might potentially have a stun of some kind if she ends up being a harasser, but I do think this is the route they'll go if they go for support. They could also go in a route completely unrelated to using their bow to harm the hunter, which is always a possibility. If there's one key takeaway Knight and Fire Investigator taught us, it's to not judge a book by its cover. For all we know, Archer might be a secret decoder who will shoot at ciphers, which will boost their decoding speed temporarily. If there's one thing I'll give NetEase, it's that they're good at taking a simple concept and flipping it on its head. All we can do is wait until Archer is properly introduced, which is confirmed to be on the 28th. For now, though, I'm gonna place my bets that she will be a harasser in the game, due to the fact that we're due a new one. Let me know who you think she will be in the comments section below, though. With that brief discussion aside now, I think it's about time to talk about the changes themselves. Despite the low character count, the changes made to these characters are actually very significant. Because of that, I'm not really gonna have a structure and we'll just talk about the hunter changes first and then the survivor changes. Let's start off with Goatman, who got a few good nerfs just for good measure before Koa begins. I doubt these changes will be in by the time Koa starts, but we can at least see how his strength will go based on them. For starters, double caging got yet another nerf, with the energy consumption being increased from 14 energy to 19 energy. This means, rather than double caging consuming 54 energy, it will take 59 energy to double cage. I feel like this change was purely meant to put the final nail in the coffin for the lock-off strat, something I am very happy about. Lock-off strat was a terrible gameplay style, as it essentially made it impossible for survivors to kite Goatman if they weren't a specific survivor. It was a gameplay style I advocated against, since this anti-gameplay was just unfun for the survivor side and was very toxic for the game. This was eventually nerfed a lot over the course of Goatman's changes, and I think this will be the final nail on this gameplay style. It will still exist in this game, don't get me wrong, it's just all the changes will now make that gameplay style costly to spam. Overall, I'm extremely happy with this change, as it'll further encourages people to go away from the lock-off playstyle and more towards the mind game playstyle. The mind game playstyle is still very strong on top of giving survivors ways to counterplay, so this is an overall healthy change in my opinion. The next change they did was towards the cage timer itself, reducing it from 10 seconds to 9 seconds. This is an overall nerf to Goatman, as there is now less time the survivor will need to last until the cage goes away. Obviously, 1 second less time isn't too big of a nerf, but that time can quickly add up the more cages that get wasted. It especially begins to hurt early game when survivors are at their strongest with max items usage and all the pallets to work with. This means Goatman needs to be smart about how he should use his cages in a kite, which is really good in my opinion. Like I said, not the craziest nerf they could have given him, but it will be impactful if you aren't able to play Goatman well. Overall, I think these were really good changes made to Goatman without going so far as to gut him. One of the problems with NetEase's balancing is the fact that, sometimes, they will go too far and completely gut a character. Because of that, I'm happy these nerfs were impactful, yet small, as it allows us to gauge Goatman's strength when he does enter tourney. The same can be said for Hullabaloo, who got a nerf that sounds small, but is actually game-changing. As of right now, when you enter one of Hullabaloo's stage colors, the effect the color applies will instantly take effect. This means, if you enter the black stage for a brief second, you will automatically be slowed down for that brief second and for 0.5 seconds after leaving. Now, this will change, as the stage effects will only occur 0.3 seconds after a survivor enters one. This isn't that big of a deal for the white and black stage, as those effects are very minor and won't come into play a lot of the time. However, while this will be a small nerf for those stages in particular, this will be a massive nerf to the red stage. For those of you unaware, the red stage is arguably the strongest stage Hullabaloo has because of its ability to silence the survivors. This can either be from your stage or your clone's stages, meaning you have easy access to this silence. This makes certain harassers, such as Wildling and Forward, unplayable as you are unable to balloon rescue survivors against Hullabaloo. Additionally, it severely nerfed kiting abilities, such as Patience Hook or Merc's elbow pads. Since that split second they need to use their abilities is more than enough for Hullabaloo to cancel their abilities with clones. Because of that, it can lead to frustrating situations where your ability is the only thing that could make or break a win for the survivors. However, because of the red stage, you fail that much needed pad or stun on the hunter, leading to a loss. With this change, the situation of this happening go down drastically, as you now have that extra 0.3 second to work with. This is more than enough time for Forward and Wildling to be able to tackle Hullabaloo, allowing them to balloon rescue against Hullabaloo now. This also increases the chances of Merc and Patient to get their items off and pull away now, which is extremely good. It allows stunners, like Coordinator or Enchantress, to have a bit of window room to use their stuns even if they enter the red zone. There are so many survivors who got buffed up thanks to this change, so I see this as a huge nerf to Hullabaloo. This may be the only nerf he got, but it is a really good nerf if you ask me. Next is Knight, who got a nerf to Chivalrous Sympathy, which I am not at all surprised about. Out of all the rescue abilities in this game, Chivalrous Sympathy is, without a doubt, the most busted rescue ability in this game. It essentially acted like a free Tide Turner or a second one if you brought Tide Turner. It only lasts 8 seconds, but that is more than enough to pull off a rebound kite that can win you the game. It also gives Knight a way to safely rescue, as the animation for Chivalrous is short and you gain the shield immediately upon rescuing. This can protect you against detention hits, makes it so terror shocking him is impossible, and gives the chaired survivor time to get away. It was ridiculously busted and needed to get toned down, which this nerf does. First, they changed the distance in which Knight will rescue from, going from 8 meters to 7 meters. The same is applied to the height, with it being 0.84 meters rather than 1.26 meters. This change is kinda whatever, but it could make an impact when it comes to rescuing before half. That being said, this is nothing compared to the next nerf they did tonight. The next change they did tonight was nerf Chivalrous rescue speed, making it 0.8 seconds rather than 0.67 seconds. This nerf is pretty big, as it gives hunters a bigger window to hit and terror shock Knight out of this animation. Because of it, Knight players cannot just click the Chivalrous button next to the hunter and possibly get a free rescue off. They need to think about when to use Chivalrous and work around the risks of this new time. Once again, really good change for the game's health, as having your camp get wasted because you couldn't react to Chivalrous was very annoying. Finally, Chivalrous will now share properties to Tide Turner, meaning you won't be able to use map interactions, such as tram or coaster. This is a smaller change and I doubt this will come into play in your matches, but this is still a substantial nerf to Knight's Chivalrous. This makes it so you won't be able to make quick and easy escapes as Survivor when you get rescued via Chivalrous. Honestly, I really don't have much to say about the Chivalrous changes because what more is there to say? They toned down Chivalrous enough to where it isn't a rescue for free button anymore, which is a huge change to make. This means Knights will need to really be careful when rescuing against the hunter, as one slip up could cost them the match now. Overall, a really healthy change to Knight that isn't too big, but just enough in the places he needed changing. Last is Novelist, who got a ton of buffs from this balance changes cycle. To start things off with the most tame of these changes, his decoding nerf got decreased slightly. For those of you who don't know, Novelist has a trait that acts as both a buff and a nerf for his decoding speed. When he is decoding a cipher below 50%, he will decode the cipher 10% faster and it becomes 10% slower after it goes above 50%. This is meant to make him decode roughly the same speed as a normal survivor, which is whatever. With this change, though, his decoding debuff goes down from 10% to 5% when decoding above 50%. This just makes it so he decodes faster now, which is definitely good. However, it's not that potent of a buff as is, so this isn't really something people focus on when talking about him. What people are talking about, however, is the new range Novelist can swap places with the hunter at, both solo or next to a teammate. Novelist's book range has increased from 11.1 meters to 13.5 meters, with the range being 9.8 meters instead of 6.8 meters when next to a teammate. This is a massive buff to both his support and containment, as he can swap places with the hunter from further away. This buffs a lot of his containment aspects, but it also buffs way more support and rescue aspects. Because you can swap places from farther, Novelist can use it when going in from rescue to get further towards the chair. It also forces the hunter further away from chair, meaning they will need to make more distance to catch you. Even when you are next to a teammate, the extra distance can be game-changing, especially if in a scenario such as basement. That extra bit of distance can possibly be enough to get the both of you out of basement before the hunter catches you, which is really good. It can also be used to assist your teammates, allowing you to swap places with the hunter from further away and take them further. It's a really versatile buff that will give Novelist a lot more flexibility whether supporting or in chase, so this is an amazing change that was made. The last change they did was increase Metaphor's speed boost time from 2 seconds to 2.5 seconds. Once again, really minor buff, but it will definitely help Novelist when getting away from the hunter. Overall, these are some amazing buffs Novelist got and I have no doubt this will help Novelist in the meta. This is especially good, since he is a pretty good survivor to go against the newer top tiers, like Hullabaloo and Goatman. I can't wait to try the Novelist changes when they come to live, which should be a week from now as of writing. With that said, that's about everything there is to cover with the recent balance changes. Overall, there weren't a lot of changes that were made, but the changes that were made are really good. I'm sure they will shake up the meta a little bit without outright removing certain characters from it. This makes me really interested to see how they approach certain balance changes, like Rippers. Nevertheless, that's all the time I have for today's video. I'll be back with another Survivor video really soon, so look forward to that. Until then, thank you so much for watching and I will see all of you next time.